Oh,
Hello, my name is Kendra Hawk. I am the Associate Registrar of Enrollment Management for the MD program at the University of Toronto. And if you're tuning in, this is a Facebook Live with interview tips from our current MD students. And these are our current MD students. Do you guys mind introducing yourselves?
sure. So my name's Andy. I'm a second year MD PhD student. So I started with HEDA and then now I'm in my first year of my PhD. I came originally from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver.
And my name is Hedda. I'm also a second year medical student currently. I'm in the MD program, and I'm also on the admissions committee this year as the student admissions rep.
So anyone who tunes in is welcome to type in a question as we go along. We might not answer it right away if we're in the middle of something, but we absolutely welcome your questions. And just to get it out of the way, if you haven't read our admissions update from January 15th, we are now sending out invitations to our MD interviews. Some people already have their interviews scheduled for the first day, but in no way is it indicative of your ranking. We send out interviews as files are reviewed, and it is not in any particular order. It's not any advantage to be at the beginning or disadvantage to be at the end. So if you don't have an interview date or an invitation yet, please do not panic. It is not reflecting on you in any particular way. I don't think I could be any clearer about that, could I?
I was on the last possible day of interviews.
Yes,
so
it doesn't matter which day you're interviewed. So I will just get right into it with our guests. I thought my first question for you, just in a general sense, is how many MD interviews did you attend?
So I'll start. I attended interviews at UBC and U of T.
Okay. And you were living in Vancouver at the time?
Yeah, I grew up in Vancouver.
Right.
And I attended interviews at U of T and Queens.
Okay.
And
Great, thank you. Just wanted to give people an idea, like some people do go to several interviews, some only go to one school. It doesn't really make a difference, but it does change how you prepare for the interviews because every school has a different interview style. So we're going to talk generally about the U of T interviews. The U of T interview format is MPI. Hedda, do you mind explaining what that means?
Sure. So MPI stands for multiple panel interview, and essentially there's 4 stations. You'll have 12 minutes at each station and 2 minutes outside to kind of just like catch a breath and relax. And each of the 12 stations, you'll have one person interviewing you, whether it is a resident, someone from the faculty, or someone from the community. And yeah.
Okay. And did you have anything to add?
No, I think
that's about it. So maybe one of you could talk me through your interview day. Like, I think everyone sort of understands in theory what the MPI interview is like, but you know, that's only an hour of your day. So how does it work? What happens that morning or that afternoon when you come in? Maybe you could tell us, Andy.
Sure, and then Hedda can take over after.
Sure.
She's coordinating that day. So I actually flew in from Vancouver the day before, had the mistake of taking a red-eye flight, but I got as much rest as I could just before the interview, and then came in the afternoon. So then they start with the whole spiel, and then there's always an admissions video. So it was one that I guess was kind of goofy, and it was nice because it really calmed you down. And then we split up into 3 groups. So one group would go through the interviews first. The second group would have kind of a finances session / talk with current MD students. And the third group would go on a tour across U of T Med. So these groups would rotate throughout the day, and I think it was about 4 hours in total. I had my interview first, which everyone has different preferences, but it was nice to kind of get it out of the system. And I found that during the interviews, everyone was just super nice, as opposed to trying to ask questions from left field and throw you off.
Right.
It was more of a feeling that they just wanted to get to know who I am. So I actually had a lot of fun during my interview. There were questions where I stumbled, but overall, I thought it was a very fun experience.
And you know, it's important. I was asking one of our admissions team about their tips, and when you do stumble, on interview day, it's not the end of the world. It's like, well, first of all, the person who's interviewing you is just a person. They understand what it means to stumble. And you just have a whole fresh start when you knock on the door for the next station. So don't let it throw you if you feel like you didn't do well at a station. So how was your interview day? Was it sort of a similar experience?
Yeah, so my interview day was also a very similar experience. In my interview day, there was a elevator
famous
difficulty. So thankfully I wasn't in that group, but I was the group that ended up going first because of that group. So things like this might happen in your interview day, and I think it's just best to keep calm and relax, and you know you're there for a reason, and just do your best and be yourself.
So the MPI is a timed interview, and it is a short amount of time with one person. So how did you prepare for that specific kind of interview? Maybe Andy, you could start.
So before my U of T interview, I had done the UBC one, which was an MMI, and that was a very different format. And I think they would give you kind of weirder questions to throw you off. But for the MPI, I found it, with the foresight of realizing it's people trying to get to know you, I found the thing that was the most helpful was looking through my ABS and my experiences and kind of reflecting on each one and thinking, what is the story behind this? How can I contextualize this into kind of who I am, and what reflections do I have that I can maybe share? You don't need to share a story with each answer, of course, but it was more of just an exercise in introspection and getting to know myself. And then I felt comfortable, and it goes from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the nugget in there also that the admissions team asked me to stress is to review your application material. It's a good idea just to look it over, remember when you wrote it, you thought was the most significant thing to talk about. And it's helpful for so many reasons that Andy outlined. How about you, Hetty? How did you prepare for this kind of interview?
So my preparation was very similar to Andy's. I just went through my application, kind of reflected on every activity that I did and what I actually learned from that activity. How did that affect me as an individual? And that was basically what I did.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to check something. Did either of you practice? How did you actually practice? Beyond preparing and being familiar with your application materials, did you have an interview buddy? Did you go to career centers and seek out interview practice that way? What kind of practice did you do?
So I practiced quite a bit with my friends who also had interviews or who also were going through that same process, and also with friends that weren't going through that process at all. And it was just interesting to get both feedbacks because they pick up on different things. And I think, it was mostly them asking me questions. It could be about anything. And
I actually had kind of distinct practice groups. So one for UBC and then one for U of T.
Okay.
And we had a small group of people that we were not afraid to give strong criticisms for, and very constructive criticisms.
These are good friends.
Exactly, they're your friends.
Or terrible friends.
We actually all got in. So some of these are our classmates right now. But I think with practicing, it made me realize what styles worked for me and what styles didn't work for me. So I have a friend who would go, when you ask her a question, she'd go, I have 5 things to talk about. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And go through the list, and it's super structured. When I tried that, I forget the 4th and 5th thing. So I realized I just go in and kind of have some thoughts, and I take it from there. And that worked better for me. And I also just became more comfortable in this interview setting, and that was really important.
And something actually that stuck with me, Andy, that you haven't mentioned, I don't know if it's on purpose. Andy did the MD PhD interview, so this might be why you did this, but you actually looked at research papers about the interview process. Which I thought was clever. If you're someone who's interested in understanding why something's happening, I think we've answered it. It's no trickery. We just want to find out more about you at our interviews. So maybe that's what you found when you read the papers, but that's the point of them.
It's all to feel more comfortable.
No, exactly. I really thought it was a really clever way to prepare, but I'm the kind of person who would do that too. So, you guys touched on it, that you actually enjoyed your interview day. But yeah, how did you find the actual interviews? Was it really high stress? How was the atmosphere? You know, did it feel like a boiler pot, or was it a different kind of day?
Personally, I had a lot of fun during my interview day now when I reflect back on it. But if I were to think how I was feeling during the day, I think it's okay to be nervous. Everyone gets nervous on interview days. But I think it's also important to have fun and really just try to be yourself. I think that's the best advice that anyone can give you, as cliche as it sounds, because we're really trying to get to know you as a person. And we really want you to depict the best version of yourself. So I think looking back on my interview day, I had a lot of fun. I interacted a lot with the volunteers and the other interviewees, and we just had conversations about literally anything and everything. I remember waiting outside of the room, like of the interview room, for 2 minutes, and I was talking about the water bottle with one of the volunteers. So really, you can have conversations about anything and just have fun.
Yeah. And you can also choose not to talk. I know that myself, if I were preparing for an interview, I would not want to be talking with people, but you are welcome to chit chat if that's something that calms your nerves.
There's all these volunteers there, and they're all very friendly and happy to talk. I remember during that 2-minute break, I have like kind of my rituals almost of getting pumped and getting ready. It's things that I do before tests. So I would take those 2 minutes to decompress and then prepare myself. So I think that was the most stressful time for me. And then I walk in, and you just see an interviewer who's like really friendly, and kind of my guards were off. Something else that was nice about the weekend, coming from out of town, I went to the coffee house, and there I actually met a lot of my classmates now. I also met my roommates, and we became fast friends during the interview. And then we decided to.
I know about this too.
We decided to room together when we came to U of T.
Yeah, the coffee house is a great opportunity, and when you get your interview, you'll get the invitation to the coffee house, and I totally recommend going. You'll meet Hedda there for sure, and Dion, who also is helping coordinate the actual interview days. And I think it's just a way to reassure yourself that really this is a very human experience. Like you're going to be meeting people who are curious about you, and it's a great way to start the weekend.
Sorry, just to add on to that, attending the coffee house has no implication on whether you're offered an admission at all. So don't feel like you have to attend. It's just a good way to kind of debrief before.
Absolutely not. Yeah, everything is optional, really, except for the interview itself. You don't have to eat the bananas on interview day. We do have a question, which is a good segue into the next set of questions I was going to ask. And it's from someone asking if there's any differences with the international interview. So, and if there's a special way to prepare. So there is no difference. You'll be in with the domestic students. You're going to be asked all the same questions. And so I think that my only advice is that if you are, if you're international, there's so many different kinds of international applicants. Maybe you've already been living in Canada for several years. But if you are new to Canada, I would just learn a little bit about our healthcare system and how it works, because your people who are interviewing you are volunteers, they're current students, they're healthcare professionals, they're members of the community. And I think the one thing they might sort of assume is that you understand our healthcare system in a basic way.
You don't need to study it.
You don't need to study it. No one's going to ask you questions about it. I just mean, it's a public health, there's just some helpful things to know that about being a public healthcare system that would make it very different when you're talking to someone who's working in the healthcare system than someone who uses a pay-use healthcare system. And again, that's just a suggestion. It's not going to be part of the interview. But I think that there are some extra planning issues around coming from far away, and that's why I specifically asked Andy if he could come, is how do you plan for all that travel? I mean, it sounds like you did the red eye. I'm curious how that worked out for you. How much time do you really need? How do you figure out where to stay in Toronto? And do you have any tips around that?
So I took a red eye because it was cheap, but I flew in. I had a full day before my interview to just kind of decompress.
You came at 6 a.m. interview.
No, so that would have been maybe a little bit more stressful. But I stayed at an Airbnb. I guess I am generally a little bit more social when I'm stressed, and my hosts were actually super nice, really wholesome, and they were encouraging me.
That's
so
nice.
I found a source of support there. But I guess the day before the interview, I was in Toronto, and everyone has different styles of how they want to prepare, and it's all towards the goal of just feeling comfortable when you're sitting down and talking about yourself.
Yeah.
But I did some reading, and perhaps the most reassuring thing was that 50% of the people who interview get offers, and so that calmed me down a little bit. I went to explore Toronto and walked down University Avenue, was amazed because it was my first time in Toronto, and was just kind of inspired. So it was really nice, and the weather wasn't too bad at the time. So it was a pretty restful day before the interview.
Yeah, and I think it is important to build in the rest and getting adjusted, especially if you're jumping time zones, because it can be a big transition, and it is cold right now. It depends when you get your interview. I mean, in April it'll be nicer, but build in a little time for you to feel like yourself again. That's for sure. And Hedda, you came from Hamilton, which I feel like also has its challenges. I know I've woken up for interview day. I've worked at different interview days, and the snow was falling, and I wonder, did people coming from Hamilton wake up at 4 a.m. to make sure that they would beat the snow, or did you spend the weekend in Toronto?
So thankfully my parents were living in Toronto, so I did come the day before. So I came the Friday afternoon, and I stayed the night with my parents, and my parents were good enough to drop me off to interview day. So that was very comforting for me.
Did your parents leave the Michener building, or did they have to be shooed out?
No, they left me outside. I didn't want them to come in with me. So I kind of asked them to drop me off right at the corner. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go now, bye. And then right after the interview, I went and bought Krispy Kreme donuts to comfort myself.
There is a Krispy Kreme right across the road from the Michener Center.
I feel like I've said this on Facebook Live too.
It definitely was a highlight for you, wasn't it?
Really
I would have gone for the faux on Baldwin Street, but I guess that's how everyone's different. So we have a question here, and this is my poor eyesight. Yeah, we're just trying to get to know you, and no, the interviewers have set questions though. And really, we're not going to talk too much about the station because there's not really any way to prepare for the questions. Even if you knew what they were, there's some research where students who know what the questions are actually do worse because you over-prepare for them. So as far as what the questions are and how to anticipate the stations, just read your materials from your application over, read widely in general. We're not looking for only expertise in healthcare, so that's another way to prepare for the interviews, just sort of have a broad kind of understanding of the world. Yeah, and I'm afraid we're not going to get into much more because it's just not going to be helpful for you.
I can comment a little bit on that. So I found that, especially for the MMIs, which came first, that was when a lot of the stress was, because it's my first interview. It's tempting to try to kind of guess the questions beforehand and really think about what you're going to get. Like, is it, what kind of situations, what kind of questions are they going to throw at me? But if you over prepare for it, for me, I find it's actually detrimental because I have this idea in my mind of what these questions are, and then when they actually ask me something and it's not, it doesn't fit with that idea,
right.
I get thrown off and I get stressed. So I think it's more of prepare for almost anything, and perhaps your preparation goal is not to find the best answer, the perfect answer to each hypothetical question that can possibly exist, but rather to just be comfortable enough that you can give your answer. As an additional little thing, we talk a lot about, we want to get to know you and then kind of be yourself. And I know sometimes it can feel unsatisfying because I would have been unsatisfied with that when I was applying because I just wanted something to hold on to. But something that helped me was when I was prepping with my friends and I would ask them questions. And sometimes you'd see that there are sometimes right and wrong answers, but if everyone gives the same answer and it's all good, as an interviewer, when I was practicing, it was kind of dull and a little bit boring because you just hear the same thing over and over. But if they give you an answer that is correct, but it also has their experiences or their perspective and their angle, then it infuses a little bit more of who they are. And I just find that those answers, as an practice interviewer, sound and feel way more satisfying to hear.
Yeah. That's what I have here for a final tip from me is to be authentic. Did you have anything to add?
I guess another thing I just wanted to add was I think over-preparing could also make you kind of sound rehearsed, and you don't want to sound like that on your interview day. And also, like, when you prepare for every single possible question and you get something completely different, you might try to fit your answers for those questions to this completely different answer where it doesn't make sense. So I think it's important to reflect on your experiences, have a few things that you can talk about, but don't try to prepare for specific questions. It's not worth it.
Thank you. So I think that we've tackled all the topics that I thought were important. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add? I guess actually what I missed is how did you keep yourself calm? But I think we kind of touched on it, just in that you have to know yourself to understand what makes you feel calm. Like, you like to be social. How did you keep yourself calm? Donuts is how Hedda keeps calm.
I've gotten better with that. I really like to meditate, so I meditated the day before, the day of. I also didn't prepare at all the day before. I didn't think about interviews at all. I went out with dinner with my family, took my dog out for a walk. And in terms of like during the actual interview, I talked to the volunteers a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone has different styles. Like, for the MMIs at UBC, the night before at midnight, I was practicing, and that was a way to just be sure I covered all my bases, just to feel like I'm ready when I go in. For the MPIs, I didn't practice the day before, but during the interviews, I would kind of stretch during the breaks, and that was my thing. I know another classmate who was standing by the door, just ready to knock. Everyone has different styles, and if you can find what works for you, so that when you walk in and start talking, that you feel kind of yourself, and you can give a really honest answer that has your perspective, whatever works.
Well, thank you very much. There are a couple of questions there's a question about refusals in the comments, which I am going to have to check, and I'll answer in the comments for you, because I'm not sure where they're at with that. But if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to our office. We always answer the phone if you call, or you can email. And if you are an MD PhD applicant, please stay tuned. We're going to have Andy stay and have another guest to join us and talk a little bit about how to prepare for that set of interviews as well. So thank you very much. Did you see anything on this?
Just one more thing. If you have any other questions, you can also reach out to the student reps, so me and Dion, at admissions.uoftmed@gmail.com, but we'll post that.
Yeah, we'll put it in the comments as well.
I can comment a little bit on one of the questions at the end. So there are a number of questions that we have to go through. So just from my experience, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're all different, though. I mean, the reason why I would hesitate to answer that is from speaking to interviewers. Sometimes I'll ask one question and then the person talks and talks and talks and talks, and they don't need to ask follow-up questions, but sometimes they need to help. Maybe there's a natural question next, or the student needs some help. Maybe, the interviewers are really quite helpful. They want to help get the best out of you. So listen to the questions if there are follow-up questions, because they're probably helpful. Sorry, I cut you off, Andy.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, it is really variable. I had some
just
interviewers.
A disclaimer, that's all.
I had some interviewers, when I was interviewing, some wanted to get the questions, and then some, there were questions clearly that were left, but then the bell rang, because we were debating the first one for so long.
Yeah.
And some went a little bit off course, and that's okay. They're trying to get to know you.
Yeah. They're evaluating like you, not your answers to the questions. The questions are just a prop.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that is really our end.
There's a few more. You scroll down.
Oh, really? Did I miss the?
Um,
Oh, you're right.
yeah.
Oh, this is like.
We're figuring out the
Sorry.
terminology.
Oh no, we got thank yous. Well, you're
There's
welcome.
one more.
It is for canned minutes. Do interviews with
So, no. Sorry, the question is about whether the interviews are tied to the CanMed's attributes. We use that, obviously, we talk about it over and over again for your written material, the applications that are being reviewed right now. But the interviews, it's not tied to the CanMeds in any particular way. Okay. All right. And again, if you have any more questions, you're welcome to email us. We'll help you as best as we can. So good luck with your interviews, and we look forward to meeting you.
Yes.
Okay, good luck.